Hello, welcome to the Comic Book Commentary. I'm Bo Leidig, and this week we're going to be once again talking about everyone's favorite not Lobo bounty hunter slash mercenary slash crazy alien guy with Blood Wulf number 3. So let's zoom in and take a closer look. First published in April of 1995, let's just go ahead and appreciate the fact that this is a pretty great cover, man. Like, the artwork is pretty solid. It's very indicative of a story point that happens within the book. I've got no complaints about this, and actually I find myself wanting to praise it. And as I stated, yes, Blood Wulf is definitely an imitation or retelling of Lobo. But that being said, I'm a little bit more forgiving of it due to the fact that Rob Liefeld acknowledges that from the very beginning, as the whole point of Blood Wulf is to create Lobo as he would be if he wasn't shackled by the higher ups at Detective Comics. And okay, you can criticize that if you want, but the reality is he's upfront, he's forward about what he's doing, and he's trying to make a point about, why being an independent creator is so much more freeing. Whether or not he makes that point is completely up to the reader to decide. But, again, he's not trying to hide anything here. He's just, flat out telling us, here's what I'm doing and why. Writer, Andy Mangels. Artist, Derek Gross Sr. Colorist, Gloria Vasquez. Color separations, in color. Lettering, Kurt Hathaway. Editor, Eric Stevenson. Associate Editor, Kurt Hathaway. Blood Wulf created by Rob Liefeld. On the first page, we can see we are in the deep recesses of space as we slowly approach what is, in fact, legally distinct from and totally not at all the Death Star from Star Wars. And if you try to make the argument that it is, Rob Liefeld's legal team will argue that you're wrong. The whole first page is kind of funny because it's just a buildup of a place that this place is not. And it's a complete misdirect joke, stating all these different descriptive properties of this amazing planet where all these weird creatures live, and it's very poetic. And then right at the very last little speech bubble here, it just says, this is not that place, which I thought was kind of funny. It's a one-off gag, but they're only using one page to tell the joke. And they needed to establish this place as part of the universe anyway, so it kind of fits. Once we go inside of the legally not Death Star, we are finally introduced to the story's main antagonist and one of the leaders of the regime, the villain known as Vas Deference. I'm not making that up, that is in fact his name. If you don't know what that means, feel free to Google it, but be warned, there will be some human anatomy photos that are accompanying that Google search. Vas looks to be like some sort of weird crossover between Darth Vader and Trapjaw from He-Man, and he is walking around going on some long poetic diatribe about how he's trying to lure Blood Wulf into his trap. This is the whole reason he has captured Blood Wulf's mother, who we see here depicted for the first time, and the family resemblance is in fact uncanny. She literally just looks like Blood Wulf with a perm and earrings. Vas goes on to state that this whole thing has been an elaborate plot to make Blood Wulf come to him so that he can exact his revenge on Blood Wulf for some reason that we're not entirely certain of. Also, I gotta point out, I love this little trooper guy who has to follow Vas around with a flashlight and keep the flashlight pointed at his face the entire time for dramatic effect. I think that's hilarious. Vas is absolutely a comedic relief type of weird, over-the-top villain. However, I feel like that's very fitting for this story because everyone in this story is weird and over-the-top, so he fits into the context of this story perfectly in that sense. We're then teleported to another part of space where we see our heroes exiting the wormhole that they entered at the end of issue number 2, and entering regime space for the first time. It's at this point that Blood Wulf finally decides to start asking exactly what the regime is, as he doesn't have any idea. He's never heard of them before, he doesn't know who Vas is, and he doesn't know why his mother's been kidnapped, and he demands these answers from Ogo immediately, but Ogo doesn't take kindly to being yelled at, especially after, since meeting up with Blood Wulf, he's had his entire body destroyed once and now has a giant hole blasted through the middle of his, I guess, cybernetic body replacement, and he's pretty much at his wit's end and had enough with being bossed around by Blood Wulf. However, at this point, Dr. Gale yells at the two of them to pipe down and states that they're acting like children, and she explains to Blood Wulf that the regime is an evil empire of sorts that's been going around conquering planets throughout this part of the galaxy, but hasn't quite made it to their part of the universe yet, which is why he hasn't heard of them. She tells him that Vass is one of their most brutal leaders, but he's also quite strange and extravagant, but he's also nothing to be trifled with, as he has instilled fear in most of his enemies. We then see Snood interject, stating that Blood Wulf's mother is actually leading the rebellion against the regime, which is why she was captured and then sent the two droids to find Blood Wulf so that he could save her. Blood Wulf starts to take all this in and try and figure out what his next move should be. However, they're all interrupted when suddenly the ship alerts Dr. Gale that it is nearly out of fuel, and she realizes that the ship that they escaped the space station from was in fact refueling at the time, which means they've got to find somewhere to land ASAP if they want to have any hope of succeeding in their mission, because a distress call at this point will only be responded to by the regime, and they can't let the regime know of their location or that they're even in this part of space in the first place. They see a planet nearby, and Dr. Gale says she's going to do her best to get the ship there so that they can land safely and regroup. As the ship breaks through the atmosphere of the planet, our heroes are somewhat distraught to realize that there is no land in sight, which means their only option is to come in for a water landing and cross their fingers that their ship doesn't sink immediately. However, all is not entirely lost, as they are noticed by a nearby vessel. We see a small man by the name of Tattoo, which does indicate that this will be some sort of spoof on Fantasy Island, and to some degree, I think also the Love Boat. Tattoo points at the ship, stating, "De ship," of course. And the captain states, "I see it, Tattoo. You have a real knack for pointing out the obvious." As the ship approaches, our heroes are hopeful that they've been rescued, and pray that the ship that they're in doesn't sink until they can at least get on this other vessel. As the vessel approaches, we also notice that it looks to be some sort of weird mix between a submarine and an ocean liner bolted to the top of it. As it gets near, they ask how many are on board and who will be coming aboard. Our heroes answer, and they tell them to send up the droids first and have Dr. Gale and Blood Wulf come in last. Dr. Gale states that something seems off about this and that she's not too enthusiastic about being rescued by these people. Blood Wulf tells her to not get her panties in a bunch as he follows her up the ladder, but she states, "I'm not wearing any panties, as you can probably already see." And he, surprisingly and a little bit uncharacteristically, seems a little embarrassed by this, as he uses his hand to cover up her underside so that he's not looking up her skirt, which, kudos to Blood Wulf. He's kind of trying to be as much of a gentleman as he can in this instance. As Blood Wulf takes himself up over the bow to get on the deck, he thanks the captain for rescuing them, and then starts to tell him that they'll repay him when they get to the next port. However, the captain immediately bursts into laughter and explains to Blood Wulf that they weren't rescued, they were captured, and that he plans on selling all of them into slavery when they get to the next port. Dr. Gale is not too enthusiastic about this, as she states, "Yeah, well, what do you want carved on your tombstone then?" Blood Wulf is like, "Hey, that's my line." However, before the heroes can mount any sort of offensive, they are dogpiled by the entire crew of the ship, who, by the way, are all caricatures of celebrities from the mid to late 1970s and early 1980s. We can see Charlie's Angels right here. Tattoo, of course. There's a lot of ones on here that I don't necessarily recognize. Some of the caricatures are a little bit easier to pick out than others. I'm pretty sure that this is supposed to be Phyllis Diller. I could be wrong about that, but that's who I think it's supposed to be. A battle goes completely haywire on the deck as a melee ensues. We see Dr. Gale swinging on a rope, firing a laser into the crowd. We see Ogo pulling out his not lightsaber and just chopping people to bits. Snood is panicking. Blood Wulf throws several of the characters up into the side of the ship, and he thinks that he's got the upper hand when suddenly he's grabbed from off the side of the ship by a giant squid who's underneath the ship. Gale sees that this has happened and is worried about her friend. However, she has her own problems as more of the crew members try to attack her from behind. As Blood Wulf is pulled under the surface of the water, he is then face to face with an enormous squid-type alien monster, which instead of having two large eyes on the side, just has one eye coming off of some like weird little tentacle thing. Blood Wulf then realizes that he doesn't have to hold his breath as his what is it called? It's a somatic field, is keeping him alive and giving him the ability to breathe underwater the exact same way that it does in outer space. He pulls one of his arms free. However, we see that the suckers have yanked off his skin and he is now bleeding. He then pulls a knife out of his boot and slashes one of the tentacles, thinking he has the upper hand. Unfortunately for him, he didn't take into account that this beast has lots and lots of arms, and it once again wraps him up and pulls it closer toward its mouth, preparing to eat Blood Wulf alive. As the squid pulls Blood Wulf closer to its mouth, preparing to eat him, it starts to loosen its grip so that it can start to take bites off of Blood Wulf's body. This gives Blood Wulf the opportunity to grab a grenade off of his belt and toss it directly into the squid's mouth, which, of course, has the desired effect of blowing these squid into hundreds, if not thousands, of little pieces. Meanwhile, back on the surface, the captain has the crew close up all of the openings on the ship, converting it into its submarine mode, and it dives then under the surface to its apparent destination. Blood Wulf sees this and realizes that he needs to follow, but he can't possibly swim fast enough to keep up with the ship, so he uses one of these squid's tentacles as a grappling hook of sorts to latch onto the side of the sub and hold on for dear life as it drags him to the location that it plans to sell all of his friends off. Blood Wulf is then shocked when he sees the location that they are headed to, which is the Abyss Mall, or Abysmal. We see it as an underground mall of sorts, and that this has a lot of weird, quirky stuff going on in the background of this image, like we saw at the space station in the previous issue. We, of course, see the whale from Pinocchio, whose name kind of escapes me at the moment. We also see Ariel from The Little Mermaid, as Flounder has just been eaten by this other mermaid, who I think is maybe supposed to be the mermaid from Splash, but I can't remember because, God, I haven't seen Splash since I was a kid. We also see the creature from the Black Lagoon. We see Namor impaled on a trident. Charlie the Tuna. This is one of my favorites over here. We see classic Aquaman facing off against 90s angst Aquaman, who has the harpoon hand, which is kind of funny. And we see that the submarine has entered inside of the Abyss Mall, and is preparing to offload as Blood Wulf makes a quick and poignant decision to follow inside so that he doesn't lose his friends. I like this image overall. I don't think it's quite as good as the one that we saw in issue number 2 of the space station. We get all the pop culture references, like here's the yellow submarine, here's the Nautilus, I'm pretty sure. But as a whole, it just seems very lacking by comparison to the detail that was given to the big space station scene in issue number 2. Now, that being said, drawing that kind of stuff takes forever, so if they were pressed for time, I kind of get why this one may not have as much going on or as many little Easter eggs hidden within it, but it seems like a little bit of a letdown by comparison to what we saw in the previous issue. Inside of the Abyss Mall, we see the captain leading the team out in chains as he tells them that resisting is pointless and that he's had threats from all manner of people who were far more capable than the team at hand, as Dr. Gale seems to continue to believe that they have a possibility of escaping. And her belief is well-founded, as we see Blood Wulf pull himself up out of the water and tell the captain that he's got the upper hand as he uses the squid tentacle to smack the captain across the face, knocking out his teeth and knocking off his toupee. They're then jumped by the rest of the crew as a melee once again ensues. We see Blood Wulf throw Tattoo at a bunch of them, and Dr. Gale pull the gun off of one of the crew members and blast the handcuffs off of Ogo. We then see Blood Wulf lunging at another crew member as Gale tells him, hey, we got to get together, we got to formulate a plan, and Blood Wulf does his best to try and make sure that the crew is all on the same page and that they can fight their way out of this mess. The fight goes completely off the rails as Blood Wulf starts to just grab and beat up anybody he sees, including who I believe is supposed to be B. Arthur and J.J. Walker. We also see John Travolta down here stating that Scientology rules, which is kind of hilarious because he's drawn as his character from Welcome Back, Kotter, which is, I think, way before he was ever involved in Scientology. We then see that the Charlie's Angels are attacking Dr. Gale, as well as Willis and Arnold from Different Strokes are attacking Snood. And we see Dr. Gale get the upper hand as she smashes two of the girls' heads together. And then Snood is able to basically hold off the two boys as Willis tried to punch Snood in the face, only to break his hand on Snood's metal face. Ogo is doing battle with the $6 million man, and then Blood Wulf grabs Bill Bixby, I only know this because he states, "You wouldn't like me when I'm angry," and orders him to surrender. However, they are not alone in this fight, as suddenly someone from off the side of the page yells out for everyone to stop immediately. The team looks up to see that they have now been confronted by some sort of amphibious alien general guy who is demanding that they surrender. We also see that the Bill Bixby caricature guy, for those of you who don't know, Bill Bixby played Bruce Banner on the Incredible Hulk TV show, states that he's starting to get angry as we see his shoulder burst out of his shirt and it's green. Snood then tells Blood Wulf that he believes that they're being told to surrender, but they can't understand the general all that well. Due to his large amphibious lips, he has a rather pronounced speech impediment. As we see Bill Bixby transform into the Hulk, Blood Wulf throws him into a group of the enemy soldiers, tells Snood to shut up, and then we see the team turn tail and run like mad as they are vastly outnumbered. However, it's not so bad as the Stormtrooper analogs, just like real Stormtroopers, can't seem to hit anything as the team has no trouble making their way through all of their forces, not taking a single hit along the way. In fact, at one point, Blood Wulf even comments like, "Man, these guys couldn't hit the broadside of a barn." They then duck into a room and believe that they're on their way to safety when they unfortunately reach a dead end and are not certain what their next move should be, as it looks like all of their escape routes are cut off. However, Blood Wulf thinks fast and decides that if there's no door, he's going to make his own, as he takes the laser rifle that he acquired and blasts a hole straight through the wall. However, when they move through the wall, they find that on the other side is a regime laboratory, and the scientists inside start to chastise them and tell them to get out. However, the team looks across the room and sees that there's an exit. Blood Wulf tells them that they all need to get through the exit and keep running. However, he inadvertently steps into some sort of teleportation gate along the way, and one of the scientists hits the button, which makes him vanish immediately in a puff of smoke. Dr. Gale then turns around after Blood Wulf disappears and notices that they've been caught up to by the general and all of the not stormtroopers. Then suddenly a pillar of light force field envelops the team as both of the droids are suddenly disabled along with Ogo's not lightsaber. He then leans over to Gale and says that, I think that we're the ones that these guys are after, and she states, there's going to be trouble if they don't release them immediately. However, the general corrects Ogo and says that actually Blood Wulf is the one that they're after, as he blasts Ogo directly through the lower portion of his torso, underneath the hole that he already had blasted through the middle of his chest. And he then tells the team that they're all expendable, as we see Dr. Gale look rather terrified as she believes this might be the end for all of them, as we see that this is the end of the story in this issue and it is to be continued. On the next page, we get an advertisement for the Violator versus Badrock miniseries. We saw this in last week's issue on Spawn number 30. And as I stated in that episode, I am going to be making videos on the Violator versus Badrock miniseries. I have all the issues of it. I'll probably get started not too long from when this video is first published. But if you're watching this way into the future, all of the videos from this miniseries may already be published. So congratulations, you're going to get to watch them all right away. We then get a 2-page advertisement for Supreme Apocalypse. Now, I have not made any videos about this storyline because it involves issues of Prophet, Brigade, Supreme, and Glory that I am nowhere close to as of recording this video and won't be getting to for some time. So, fingers crossed one day I make it to all of this stuff, but it's going to take some time. So, you're going to be waiting a little while before we reach the Supreme Apocalypse event that crosses over multiple different publications. Again, I plan to get there one day, but, don't hold your breath. It's going to take a while. We then get 2 pages spotlighting some stuff with Extreme Studios. I'm pretty sure we've seen these exact same 2 pages in other Extreme Studios titles before. I can't remember exactly which ones. It might have been Supreme number 1 or possibly the previous issue of Blood Wulf. I'm not certain, but either way, it's nothing new. We've talked about these before. Spotlight on Prophet, which at this point was about to come out, and the Todd, I still don't know how to say his last name, Knock, maybe, profile on him. Also some photos of some of the guys working for Extreme Studios, making public appearances, signing autographs. That's all well and good. But, it seems odd that they would print up this same one in multiple issues. It seems like it would have been a better idea to maybe do spotlights on some other books and some other people who were working for the Extreme Studios team at the time. We then get an advertisement for the Extreme Studios trading cards. I might have like 1 or 2 of these cards, maybe. And, oddly enough, I do believe it's one of the Glory cards, and it might even be in chromium if I'm remembering correctly. I don't know. I might do a short on it or something just to kind of show it off a little bit, I guess, if people are interested. And we then see an advertisement for Evangeline number 1. I think I have like maybe 1 or 2 issues of Evangeline, and I have no idea who this woman is who's cosplaying as Evangeline for this photo shoot, or if she did anything else with comic books or had anything else going on in her, I guess, modeling career other than being, the real world representation of Evangeline. So, if you know who she is, feel free to leave it in the comments below. But if you don't, congratulations. You're probably in the vast majority of people who have no idea who this woman is. But you know what? Congratulations to her, because even though we're now in the year 2024, as I'm recording this video, she can always look back on her life and state, hey, I was the live action Evangeline for a hot minute. So that's something. We then get an advertisement for Wildstorm Rising Rises in the West, which is announcing public appearance dates for some of the creators at Wildstorm Comics, namely Ryan Benjamin, who took over the primary penciling duties on Union after Mike Heisler finished the Union miniseries. If you'd like to know more about Union, you can check out my Union playlist. And also Willis Portacio, who, as we know, is the creator and original penciler for Wetworks. If you'd like to know more about Wetworks, you can check out my Wetworks playlist. And on the reverse inside cover, we get yet another advertisement for Todd Toys. However, it makes sense to see this one in an Extreme Studios book, as it is also featuring the new Badrock and Chapel action figures. Of course, these are characters that were created by Rob Liefeld, so it makes sense that he would want to advertise this within the pages of one of his books, not just leaving those duties up to Todd in the Spawn books. And that was Blood Wulf number 3. Overall, I don't think it's a bad book, but I find myself not enjoying it quite as much as I did issues number 1 and 2. I don't think that's necessarily because the joke is wearing thin. It seems like this one was just a little bit more rushed. Like, it didn't get the same kind of tender love and care. As I stated, we didn't get the same level of detail on the big 2-page shot of the Abyss Mall like what we got on the interior of the space station in issue number 2. And it just seems as though, you know, they kind of rushed this one a little bit. And if they had taken a little bit more time to add a little bit more hoopla, I guess, to it, that it could have been a slightly better issue. I also actually really like the character of Vass as the villain. He's so over the top and he's so ridiculous. And normally I really kind of hate villains like that. But in the context of the Blood Wulf story, it makes perfect sense. Like, if you tried to make Vass just a standard evil guy, it would seem completely out of place in a story like Blood Wulf, where everything is just over the top and everyone is a completely just weird, wild character. So to have someone like Vass who's just upping the ante, to me, fits perfectly in the entirety of what is Blood Wulf up until this point. But then again, those are just my opinions. You may disagree completely. You might hate Vass. You might think that this issue was just as good, if not better, than the first two. And if that's the case, it's okay, because everyone's entitled to their own opinions. If you enjoyed today's video, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And thanks for stopping by. Have a great day.